upload it to YouTube to make that easier, because we've had some problems. Specifically, I've had problems, I know, with Chris, where people can't access my recording. So I'll upload it to YouTube to make it easier for you.
I'm not surprised there's problems with Chris, actually.
All right,
that was not going to go unsaid.
User issue.
You guys know that if there's one thing in the world I do not like to do, it's to waste your time. I like to launch directly into these things. So we'll let people gather as they go, and the recording can speak for itself for anybody who couldn't join us anyway. Just by way of kind of giving you a foreshadowing of what we're gonna do today. I'm gonna go through 4 big sections for you. One is the benefits of delegation, and that may seem obvious, but I'm going to try to break that paradigm for you a little bit. The second is why we don't delegate more. In other words, the myths I want you guys to drop, at least drop more than you do today. So try to lower the barrier to you delegating. Then I want to talk about what can be delegated, and kind of try to open your aperture of what might be on your list of things to delegate. And then finally, the 7 steps of effective delegation, where I'm going to give you a very clear technique on how to delegate to get better results. So if you think about the first 3 sections where we talk about the benefits, why we don't, and what can be delegated, I want you to think about that as me trying to inspire you to delegate more. And then the last section is how to delegate better. Sound like a good use of our time? I'll take these types of things. Good. All right. So let me go ahead and start to share my presentation with you, and we'll get started. I will stop incidentally at the culmination of each section, and hopefully that'll give us a chance to talk if there are questions. But if you'd like to interrupt, once I get a head of steam up and you want to try to wade into those waters, go ahead and, give me a little hand wave or raise your hand on the thing. So first thing I want to talk about is, what is it that we're talking about here? What is this thing called delegation? And, the first thing I want to clear your mind of is the thought that delegation in the form that we're talking about today is me as the CEO delegating to somebody below me in the chain of command. That absolutely is part of what we're talking about. I don't want to discount that, but I don't want you to think about it that way in no other way. So I want you to think about, if you've got a board of directors, kicking up to the board of directors. If you've got a CEO that you report to, kicking it up to the CEO, to colleagues, to absolutely include your direct reports, but think about delegation in this context as, I'm somebody who needs to get something bought, and I give a requisition of purchasing. That's delegation. If I want to have IT fix my computer, that's delegation. I want you to think about suppliers and your Vistage chair and partners that you may have. I want you to think very broadly about what we're talking about here when we talk about delegation. So what are the benefits? What are we hoping to get from this training? So my hope for you is that you are able to delegate after this training enough to ensure that you have what you need by way of capacity to do your job, to get things done. And for those of you who are in strategic positions, to the point where you have the ability to muse about what the future looks like, to think about the threats and the opportunities in your business and so forth, so that you're not just going great guns all the time just to get through your workday. I want you to think about, and this is one of the criminally underused aspects of delegation, is using delegation to develop the employees around you, to think about who isn't ready to do the thing that you want to delegate, but is close to ready. That this delegation, this thing you're going to hand them, this task, this project, is going to stretch them and give them a chance to try something new. So we want to get employee development out of this thing called delegation. We want to make sure that we have separation of tasks, that you can do the thing that you were hired to do, and the other people are doing the thing they are hired to do. And I want to use as an example of this so you kind of understand where I'm coming from. An example of, I'll go back to purchasing again. When I was a buyer, I would get one of two different types of requisition. One requisition is, I want a chair. And the second requisition is, I want a blue chair with these adjustable arms and this, and here's the number, and this is the website. Here's what you would pay for that that particular chair. One of those people is delegating and letting me do my job. The other person is doing my job for me and pretending like they're delegating to me. So I want you to look at this as a way to really separate tasks. Let them do the thing that they're best at. Let you do the thing you're best at. I want you to look at delegation as a tool to allow for those things that are important in your world, but are not necessarily urgent. We are all good, guys, at the world finding us. The next email that comes in, the next phone call that comes to you, the next employee that walks in your office, that they set your agenda. Those things feel urgent. It feels good to get them done. I want you to look at delegation as a way to get to the things that you have to consciously work at to get done. Those things that are important, like as you see in the important and not urgent quadrant of that matrix down there: preparation, planning, prevention, relationship building, personal development. I want you to look at delegation as a tool so that you can get to those things. You have to delegate enough for that to happen, to spread the workload out. The number of times I have had a leader tell me there's no one left to delegate to, and they're working until 9 o'clock at night, and their employees are all going home at 5 comfortably and not terribly challenged. We want to change that dynamic. Everybody should be putting in a fair day's work, and you delegate to spread that workload out so that everybody's got a fair amount of work. Another way to use delegation is to make sure, it's an employee engagement tool. It gives people an opportunity to do things that are outside of their day-to-day. So maybe this is that stretch assignment, right? To run a project that doesn't fit their job title necessarily, but it doesn't really fit anybody's job title. And I'm going to ask you to do it. And now all of a sudden, the thing that may seem routine to you is stretching and giving somebody else that serendipity in their day-to-day that is creating the the employee engagement that you're hoping for in your organization. I also want us to delegate, guys, because the employees that you hired, you go out of your way. I know all of you, and you go out of your way to hire these intelligent, creative human beings. And delegation is a way to unleash that intelligence, that creativity. The people around you are worthy of you expecting great things of them, and that's why you would delegate to them. And look, I know we're gonna talk about some of these reasons why we don't delegate more. That sometimes you worry that they don't want it. They don't want more. They don't want more difficulties in their day. But trust me, when you go to them and say, "Good news, I am going to trust you to do this super critical thing," there are employees on your staff that will say, "Wow, I can't believe they're trusting me to do this. This is fantastic. What a great stepping stone for my career." And you're missing the opportunity. As Ralph Waldo Emerson said, "Trust men and they will be true to you. Treat them greatly and they will prove themselves great. Give them the chance to show you just how great they are." So this is the first opportunity for me to step out. That was that first section of the training where we talked about the benefits of delegation. And I've got just 2 quick questions, guys. One is, did I miss anything? Is there something that's lingering in your head that you think, wow, here's a benefit, Brian didn't even cover it? Or some feedback, anything that you would say, boy, that one I underdo. Any thoughts come up?
Like you hit it all.
What's that, Jen?
I think for the intro, you hit it all.
All right, fantastic. I'm good at this, right?
You're very good. I do like your first slide about delegation being up, down, left, right, everywhere, and that's often a misconcept where most people think it's just delegating to whoever directly reports to me.
Yeah.
I look at it as who should be doing this task. Is it a supplier? Is it us? Is it a customer? Is it my boss? Is it someone on my team? Is it someone not on my team? Where should this role or this function really be?
Absolutely, and we're gonna cover that even more deeply in the next section.
Awesome.
I also think that the skill set of teaching someone else to delegate one step below them is valuable, because I find that when I delegate something, that person's overwhelmed, like you said. But the trick is to get them excited about delegating stuff that they don't have to do anymore. So there's a lot of coaching that I do that involves training how to delegate below the person below me.
Fantastic. Yeah, this is a tool that absolutely needs to trickle down through the organization. In addition to that, Todd, that instinct that each of us should have to continue to make our jobs smaller, because that's what's going to give us the capacity to take the next interesting thing, to take the company to the next level, to take the organization to the next level. All right, so let's go ahead and jump into section number 2, where we talk about the excuses that I tend to hear. And once again, at the end of this section, I'm gonna ask you guys, what other excuses do you know of? And to be fully transparent, what I'm trying to do is get you to drop some of these, or at least minimize them. Many of these are absolutely fact, right? I mean, sometimes there's just no one to hand it to, and that's okay. So the first one is, he or she isn't qualified to do it. And the lesson of this slide is they never will be until you delegate it to them. Everybody has to do it for the first time. And, getting them there, part of getting them there is that employee development tool of using delegation for that purpose. So please don't forget that many times you're holding yourself back from being able to use somebody that way simply because you're not giving them the opportunity or the training required. She doesn't want any additional responsibility. And I've seen both happen. I kind of gave that fictional thing earlier where I said, oh, great news. I'm going to delegate this amazing thing to you, and we're going to trust you with this. And the employee effusively saying, oh, wonderful. I've seen that cut the other way, certainly, right? We've all seen where, are you kidding me? I'm already putting in 80 hours a week, and now you think I'm going to be grateful for this? One of the great pieces of art in leadership is always to know who's who. Which of the employees do you have in front of you? They don't work for me, and therefore I can't delegate to them. That is a dangerous myth. The world is out there, and much of that world wants to help you. And all you have to do is ask. I love this one. It'll just be faster if I do it myself, or if I don't have time to show it to anyone else, and therefore I can't delegate to them. But this is the very definition of the hamster wheel, guys. Yes, it's faster today if you do it yourself, but unless you're never going to delegate this again, at some point, getting someone up to speed to do this for you is going to accrue benefits to you long term. And improving your organization by delegating and doing the training necessary to do that is going to accrue benefits, not just to you, but to that employee and the organization over time. Today is the day to bite the bullet and start doing it. There's just no one left. I've been delegating, and I look around and the room is empty. There's no one left to do it. And if you can convince me that you've really done the brainstorming necessary to realize, could I ask my boss for help on this? Could I ask for a colleague's help on this? Is there another department that might take it, or a partner? Or have I thought about finding someone on Fiverr who would do this happily for me? And if you've run out of all those and you still don't have anybody to delegate to, I'll believe you. But many times this is a lack of creativity, not an actual lack of resources. They already have enough to do. I'm looking around and everybody's super busy. And so long as you are achieving your highest and best use and you're working roughly the same amount of hours as they are, maybe this is true. But frequently, as I said earlier, I've got leaders in front of me who are putting in way more effort than the employees around them, and they're not delegating, trying to tell me that it's because the other person is too busy. I used to have a director of purchasing named Eric. Great guy. I hired him. It's one of the best hires I've ever made in my life. He was great from the moment I hired him. And when I promoted him to director of purchasing from buyer, I would chronically go into his office and find him buying translations or find him leasing the company vehicles. And I would give him the hardest time because, you know, there were big projects, strategic purchasing things that I wanted him working on. And here he was working on things that he was doing as a buyer. And it took me a while to realize that one of the things that Eric was doing was letting loose a little bit of the steam that built up in him over time, because most of the things I was asking him to do were novel things that he'd never done before, that he had to figure out, and they were high risk. And every once in a while, he needed a softball he could hit. And he was delegating at least partial, or he wasn't delegating at least partially, because what he was trying to do was let that steam off and hit a softball. And if you're telling me that I like doing this task, it makes me feel good that I'm so good at it, so long as it doesn't usurp your ability to do the things that the organization needs uniquely you to do, okay. But frequently, we just hold on to tasks we like to do just because. I'm the only person who knows how to do this thing. And you always will be if you don't if you don't give it up at some point and allow somebody to get in there and do it with you. Train them. Put in the time and effort to do that. This person messed it up the last time, so I'm not going to take that chance again. When there's a breach of trust, guys, and you decide that forever you're going to hold it against somebody and they're never going to get another opportunity, you've either got the wrong employee that you shouldn't have on your team anyway, or you have a extending trust issue in yourself. And a little bit of introspection sometimes can loosen up the wheels here so that you're able to get back to delegating to the people, because we are all human. We are all have the frailty of making mistakes. That's going to happen, and you can't use it as an excuse to never delegate again. I could do it better myself. And I want you to think about the organization as a series of levels. At the entry level, what tends to happen is the best of the doers in whatever department we're talking about gets promoted to be the manager of those doers. Tends to be. Not 100% of the time. Some enlightened leaders say, I see latent leadership ability there, even though they're not the best of the best. But many times it's just the best doer gets to the best manager. The best manager goes to director. The best director goes to VP. The best VP goes to C-level executive. Best C-level executive goes to CEO. So I want you to think about this conceptually. If we were to say who's the best person for any task in any organization, we would automatically say, well, it must be the CEO. They were the best of the best at every level below that, and therefore the CEO should do everything. And yet we understand intrinsically that that's fiction and it's bad policy. And yet we frequently hold on to things because you could do it better, and not because I have things I've got to do that are higher leverage. So be careful about these traps. Jim Schlexer said, if your staff can do it 70% as well as I would, it's time to let it go. And I think that's a magic thought, that you're not delegating when they can do it perfectly. You're delegating when they can do it 70% as well as you would. I don't know if I could trust her to do it. Never given it away before. Not sure it's going to work out. There's a lot of entrepreneurs on this line. We take risks. That's our job. Time to take a risk with these. And now we get into the truly toxic ones. What if I delegate it and they do it better than I do? And my identity is wrapped up in the fact that I'm really good at this. My status in the organization is that I'm the person that does this. In other words, or said another way, knowledge is power. And if I give up this knowledge, this lets some of it slip away and puts me at risk. Hopefully, I don't have to describe why this is toxic and should be let go. Bob, did you want to?
Yeah, I always think about, if you're the only one that can do something, then you're the only one, and it becomes a necessary risk to the company to mitigate that risk. So if you're the only one that does it, somebody else that's taking care of your risk management needs to mitigate against the fact that you're the only one that can do it. So do they need an insurance policy? Do they need somebody else in there? So if you're the only one that does things, or if you have only one person that can do stuff, you need to mitigate that risk of the fact that if they aren't able to be there or be around, you're going to find yourself in trouble.
Yep. And it's funny, isn't it, that the entire idea here is for them to make themselves more valuable, but it's going to cause the company to try to break that dependency. So in other words, you're almost asking the company to take those keys away from you. You may be asking yourself, if I delegate this away, what am I going to do? What's my value? Will they still need me? The least compelling types of arguments, frankly. All right, let's for a second come back to the bigger room here, and I want to ask you, first of all, did I cover them all? Can you think of any additional ones? Does anybody want to make a plea for, no, that one's legitimate, I have to hold on to that one? Anything like that?
If I could add, yeah, Brian, thanks for your help. I mean, everyone, Brian's working with me personally on this because I've got hundreds of emails every day, 1,500 employees, ton of doctor. I mean, I'm just trying to figure out, with a private equity firm, trying to manage up, manage down, manage sideways. So there's a lot of bandwidth that gets sucked into just communication and doing tasks. But so I've been trying to get my emails down and working through this. One of the opportunities I've been working on is trying to delegate and just, I'm not going to do the work. I'm going to let the other people, even though it's going to take longer, I'm going to just give them a task, wait, give them a timeline, fall back up. And then the problem, inevitably, I get jammed at the end where I'm out of time now, and they didn't get the task done the way I'd wanted to. So I just had a situation with Volkswagen yesterday that I wound up spending about an hour and a half doing people's jobs for them that were beneath me that I thought I properly laid out. And even when I did the work, they said, wow, that's amazing. That's great. I can see what you know. And so the end product was great, but then I just burned an hour and a half of time doing the work. How do you get jammed up on time and it has to get done? How do you prevent that?
Would you mind holding that question until after we do the 7 steps of effective delegation? Because I think I'm going to give you some tools that you'll see as a natural antidote to that.
Well, that was a slide for my excuse though, too, because I tried to do it and I said, I'm out of time. Oh crap, I got to get this done. So what do I do?
Yep, I totally get it. I totally get it. Yeah, when it doesn't work out, you naturally armor up. So I totally get that. Any other thoughts before
the other thing I would add to that list, I know a guy that does this. I won't say who, but waiting too long to delegate it, so you feel like there isn't enough time to properly hand it off to somebody else and give them a chance to succeed.
That's a great one, Chris. I will add that slide. Obviously, the antidote to that is don't wait so long.
Yeah, I don't.
I'm going to put Chris Lamphere on that. Very good. So let's charge forward and ask ourselves, what could be delegated. But before we get there, I want you to think about as we start to go through, because we're making a philosophical shift here from some esoteric things about the benefits and why we resist delegating, to getting into some more practical, hands-on, what can we delegate and then how do we do it. And I want you to just start thinking about collecting some of the things that you hear that you could start implementing. So create an inventory for yourself of things that you would implement. And it wouldn't hurt, as a for instance, for Stan to have in mind that stumble that he had recently and think, okay, what might I do differently in that situation where it didn't work out? I ended up jammed up on time and didn't get, and see if applying some of these things might break that log jam. All right, so what could we be delegating? Now, the obvious answer to this is anything the delegate can handle. I mean, if someone else can do it and it isn't something that inherently needs you, well, then you should think about delegating it, particularly where it's going to stretch them to be that much better employee. Because, you know, each of our jobs is to inspire the people around us to be better so that the organization has this continual upward spiral. Always remember that you have a highest and best use, and your job and the tool of delegation is one of the ways that you protect your ability to do that highest and best use. You know, sometimes, you know, yes, you could do something that your $17 an hour employee is doing, but why would you do that? I've got a member who I don't think is on the line, but always tells the story about when Dick Beadle, the Vistage, Michigan founder, was talking to him one day, and he said, why are you picking up the mail and depositing checks and all these kind of things? He said, you must be the highest paid administrative assistant in the world's history. It's those types of questions I want you to be asking yourself, right? You should be protecting your ability, not just to engage in your highest and best use, but also to engage in proactive, continual improvement of yourself and the processes that you use. And as John so eloquently said, and this is kind of a Dan Sullivanism, instead of focusing on how to accomplish a task or project, switch your thinking to think about who can accomplish that task or project. Who could I give it to? Which person or group of people could take that on for me? One of the little thinking tricks I would invite you to use is when you're gone, when you take a week's vacation or even better, a month away, whatever the employees could be doing that support you in that week or month, those should be able to be delegated when you're back, right? Why would you continue to do that unless those things are the strategic things that are your highest and best use? That should automatically go to the top of your list of things that could be delegated. Among the highest leverage things, obviously, would be routine tasks. And what I mean by routine is not, you know, boring, but things that happen on a regular basis, because those are the ones where the training and the effort to delegate pay off and highest, because they're things that happen on a regular basis. And so the effort that you put in, you get the next time it happens, the next time it happens, etc. All right. So we're about to make that shift, guys, from delegate more to delegate better. But before I do that, any thoughts lingering in your head, questions? All right, so we're gonna move on to the 7 steps of effective delegation. So, you know, get in your head that task, that project that has bedeviled you in the past. I want you to start mentally thinking about how you would apply these tools to that delegation assignment. So the first step, not to be obvious, is before you delegate. You don't even have a employee or a partner or a boss or a colleague in mind that you're going to hand this to. I just want you to, at this point, you just know you have something that you'd like to hand off. You have made that mental flip from how do I get this done to who's going to get it done for me. And I want you to start in this step with the idea from our good friend Stephen Covey and begin with the end in mind. I want you to formulate in your mind, or if it's a big project or something, on a piece of paper, on a doc somewhere, what does wild success look like? What are all the hallmarks of this going perfectly well look like? Then I want you to ask yourself, now that I know what it is, what wild success looks like, I want you to start thinking about who should this task go to? And use as your checklist skill level, right? Who's just about or fully ready to accept this? I want you to think about the workload, because remember, one of the things we're trying to do with delegation is to spread the work out. So we want to spread the wealth. And let me just take a quick veer off here, guys, because one of the things that we do, in particular, when we feel out of control when we delegate. So think about one department giving a task to another department to do. One of the things that I've found over time is that they get in a rut where I know if I hand it to Stan, I'm going to get really good results. So they always give it to Stan. And they simultaneously complain to their manager that the only good person in that department is Stan. The department overall is terrible. And in a way, I want you to remember that act of having a go-to employee, getting in a rut like that, is stunting the development of the organization to be better, because you're only giving one person the chance to excel. Delegation is by its nature a development tool. So don't forget that when you're spreading the wealth, you want to do that not just to get it off your plate, but also to make sure that everyone is developing. Remember to expect the best of employees. So that idea we talked about earlier, that's an excuse not to delegate. They messed it up last time. I don't want to give it to them again. You have to wrench yourself back and remember that the Pygmalion effect is a real thing. Employees do tend to rise to your expectations, and they also will drop themselves down to your low expectations. So if you're going to delegate to them, make sure that you steel yourself. I fully expect this is going to go well, and they will live up to those expectations. I know I've told both of my CE groups this story, but back in the 1970s, there was an accident in IQ testing that's famous in psychology. And the accident was that they gave a teacher IQ results that would suggest that her entire class was at genius level. They weren't. They were a standard distribution, just like most classes. Some kids on the low end, some kids on the high end, but most kids right in the middle. But what happened was magic, because she started to teach her class as if they were all geniuses. She started to ask herself, if they're all geniuses, why aren't they excelling? It must be me. It must be my techniques. Maybe I have to challenge them in a different way. And the result, and the reason this is still studied today, is that the kids outperformed other classes of similar distributions just based on her expectation. So remember with your employees that the Pygmalion effect is there, and you can use it for good or evil. And using it because you have low expectations will get you bad results. So be sure you keep your expectations high. And finally, ask yourself, who's interested in this? If this is a serendipitous, novel thing that you're trying to delegate, and someone has expressed, I would really like to learn more about, the quality department. I'm not in sales, but I would love to get more involved in sales. And so this would be something that they would be really interested in. This is then a career investment for you. So make sure you take that into account. All right. So step one is pretty simple. You're just getting yourself ready. You've got your definition of wild success, and you've got your person in mind now based on that kind of checklist. All right. And we're going to move into step 2. Now, step 2 is when you actually delegate, right? So now you're with the person that you're delegating to. And I want to take my members back to our good friend Chalmers Brothers from January, because he gave us some keys to how to do this well. So his keys were that you are a committed speaker. And what he meant by that, and I think is absolutely true, is you are there to do a great job of delegation. This is not a fly by their desk, shout out a few indescript words, and hope for the best results. That'll work if you just say, hey, bring a pencil to my office or something. That'll work. But if you're going to do holistic delegation, you have to be there, committed to making sure you are doing a good job of not just communicating, but supporting that delegate. Second, you need a committed listener. There's somebody who's there. They're giving you their attention. They're not half out. They're not looking at their phone. They're committed to hearing what you have to say, because they can't agree. There can't be a good commitment between the two of you if they're not listening. Second, and this is where we're going to go next, so I'm going to go deeper on this. What is that future action you're asking them for? And what is the condition of satisfaction? What is wild success? You've got to outline that clearly to them. Number 4, a time frame, a date, a time if necessary, right? The clearer, the better. And then one of the great things that I think we all walked away with in January was this idea of giving your context. I'm afraid that if you don't do X, bad things are going to happen. You should give those concerns, put them on the table. I'm worried that you're too busy. How might you overcome that? Whatever. And make sure that you and them are in the right mood for a good handoff of this. So I want to thank Chalmers for handing us this gift, because these are good additions, I think, to this training. And then remember, as he said, the background of obviousness. You don't have to go overboard on this stuff every time. If it's obvious what you're asking for, if you've delegated something multiple times, you don't have to go overboard on every step I give you. Now, I want you to think about that. Remember, back here, Chalmers said future action and conditions of satisfaction. I want you to think about that as often as possible to get that as clear as a SMART goal. Make it specific and measurable. Make sure that they believe it's attainable and relevant to what they're doing. And then make sure that that date, that time is clearly spelled out. As Earl Nightingale said, define what needs to be done and find someone else to do it. Now, as much as I want you to have a SMART goal, as much as I want you to give context and everything, what I also want you to do is tap into the intelligence and the creativity of the great people you've surrounded yourself with. There was a reason that you were so careful in who you hire, who you promote, who you transfer, all those kind of things. And it would be a shame if you squandered that by spoon feeding them every detail and every step they're going to have to take to do this delegation. So when you don't have to do that, when the risk isn't too high and the world isn't going to fall apart, I want you to delegate the objective. Here's what wild success looks like, but not the procedure, not every step along the way. That does not mean that if there's a landmine between them and success, that you don't say, hey, by the way, don't step there. That's part of the context. But spoon feeding them does not develop a creative organization. It develops a group of automatons. This is not, by the way, an indictment of procedure and process, because I want them to use procedure and process, absolutely. But I also want you to have employees who are creative enough to come to you and say, that process, we should update it. It would be better if we did it this way. So the more often you can give them the objective, but not exactly how to do it, the better off you're going to be in creating that creativity. I want you to explain the why it must be done, who it's important to, and explain the larger objective of what you're trying to do. So, just as a short illustration of why this is important, guys, is let's say for the sake of argument, CEO walks into CFO's office and says to him, I need a report. It needs to tell me these things. And I need it, very quickly. So he pulls out a napkin. He scribbles down all the information the CEO needs. He runs into the CEO's office, and the CEO looks at the napkin and says, what in the hell do you expect me to do with this? I have a board meeting that I have to pass this out at. Now, conversely, exact same situation, CEO delegates the exact same thing, but now it's just for the CEO's natural curiosity. And he walks in and he's put it in a beautiful binder. He's got a 20-page report. And the CEO flips to the last page, sees what the punchline is, and throws in the garbage. In both of those scenarios, no one's happy. The way to keep that from happening is to explain the context of what you're asking them to delegate. Because that means when they hit the barriers along the way, they're going to know to go left, go under it, go over it, go around. They won't know that if they don't understand the greater context. Final step, and Chalmers already helped us with this. We already talked about it in the SMART goal, but it can't be overstated. Clearly defining the time frame that it must be completed in. And when I say that, so often I see things like March as a time frame, first quarter, Friday. And what ends up happening is the employee says, I've done this 1,000 times. And when they say Friday, it really means Monday morning. No one looks at it all weekend. And then, the boss really did need it on Friday, and they're rushing into their office ticked off because it's not done. If you need it at 5 o'clock on Friday, say that. There's no harm in being specific here. I want you to delegate to them the authority that they have. And this is one of the things you can build in that would sidestep one of the things that Stan said. So classically, you're going to have 3 levels of authority when you delegate to somebody. The first level of authority is, I'm going to delegate this to you. I want you to come back with a recommendation. This is my plan. This is how I would satisfy this need. Very simple. So really, they have no authority. They're just going to go out. They're going to do it. And then you're going to say yes or no. I'm going to drop to the third level of authority instead of the one in the middle, because it'll make sense more in the middle when you know the both bookends. Level 3, essentially the message you're giving them is, the next time I see this, it should be complete. In other words, you have full authority. Just go and do it. And then the one in the middle is, you're going to recommend a plan to me, but since I'm not going to be available that minute, I want you to get started and then bring me the plan. So you can take a few steps down the road, but the next time I see this, it shouldn't be finished. You should be able to move. In other words, it's going to give me a chance to put some guide rails on you and get you moving in the right direction if you're off track. But be clear which level of authority they have. Because if you meant for them to bring you a plan and they walk into your office and it's done and they've spent money to do it, you're going to be unhappy. And vice versa. If they come into you and all they have is a plan and you expected it to be done, you're going to be unhappy. All right. So that's step 2. You've now handed the thing off to your delegate. They have it. They've heard you. It may be in writing. It may have just been verbal. I don't know. Step 3, remember we got 7 steps. Step 3 is for you to ask them to paraphrase back to you. Very specifically, don't parrot back to me. Don't give it to me in my words. I want you to describe what I just asked you to do. What you're doing, guys, is not insulting their intelligence. As a matter of fact, many times with new direct reports of mine, I would say, when I do this, this is me checking the quality of my delegation, not your intelligence. But I want you to paraphrase back what I just asked you for, because if I detect in that description that you don't understand how holistically what I'm asking for, it gives me the opportunity to fine tune it, to add details in where I have to. Now, this is another time when I would say they paraphrase back to you. take Jim Schlechter's advice here, because he said great leaders have learned the art of sitting on their hands and biting their lips while a team member does a task completely different, but with 70% or better or higher results. You are not waiting for perfection for the team. Now, obviously, this has everything to do with risk, money associated with it, right? When it's super high risk, you may not settle for 70%. I wouldn't use that every time. But in your routine delegation, you got to resist always adding your special dash, because what you're doing is you're creating dependence on yourself. They're never going to move until they've talked to you, because they know you're not going to be happy unless you had a push on that. And what you want to do is create an autonomous organization of problem solvers, of innovators, and allowing them to bring themselves to it is the way to do that, wherever you can. Step 4. I want you to ask at that point. So now you've got a meeting of the minds. They've described it. You've roughed them in if they have to. You've resisted the urge, hopefully, of adding a whole bunch of stuff. And then I want you to ask, what else do you need from me to be able to get this done? And they may, I don't know what they'll ask. Sometimes you'd be surprised. I need training. I don't know how to do that. I need another department to cooperate with me. Would you grease the wheels? I need a budget. I need some software that I don't have. These might all be things that you're ignorant of, right? You want up front to be able to clear those barriers for them. This isn't, by the way, in this step is not the last time you'd ever, be willing to eliminate barriers. But I want you to take the opportunity now to make sure you do that so that they have that good start. Now, this is the step, by the way, because now this is the time when they're gonna move away from you. They've got it, and they leave, and they're either gonna go off and make their develop their recommendation that they're gonna bring back to you, or they're gonna go and get it done. And I want to remind you again of one of the things that Chalmers Brothers told us, because this is brilliant, right? Now, because we normally think of delegation as our direct reports, so we just automatically think, I just told you to do it, you're going to do it. So you just automatically think you're going to get a yes. But here's the art that Chalmers brought to it. It's not always a yes. So, let's hope that you get a lot of yeses and there's no drama. But there's also times when they would say, nope, can't do it. Don't have time. Maybe this is when you're delegating up or delegating to a partner or asking your board to do something, who knows. And then there is, I hear you. I understand what it's going to take, but I need some time to figure out if I can fit this into my calendar. And I will come back to you at X date at X time and tell you unequivocally, yes or no, I can do it. So I'm going to commit to coming back to you later and giving you a definitive answer. Or here's my counteroffer. I can't do that, but I can do this. I can do it, but I need a concession on the date. I can do it, but I can't do the whole thing. You're going to have to find somebody who can do this piece of it. And all of those are ways to make sure that there is an actual commitment made. Because as he pointed out, too often in business, we think there's a commitment, we think someone's going to do it, and there's not really a commitment. So unless you have a yes for something, what it is, you don't really have a commitment. All right. So now they're off doing it, right? So they're either developing the recommendation that they're bringing back to you, or they're actually starting to get it done. And I want you to identify, now, this is one of those techniques, guys, that you're not going to use for every delegation that you do. But let's say this is a big project. It's going to take some time. I want you to build in some checkpoints. More frequently at the beginning, tapering off at the end. And the checkpoints are simply for you to say, is it going to be done? And is it going to be done to achieve wild success? It's the thing that's going to allow you to make sure that you don't end up, as Stan said, at the end with no time, and now you're jammed up and you're possibilities are totally limited on what you can do to mitigate the problem of the fact that this isn't getting done the way it should be. Now it's done. All right. So step 6 is after the delegation, it's been done. And remember, this is an employee delegation development tool. It's an organizational development tool. The way that organizations develop is to learn from what they're doing. There's a whole presentation from a speaker named Cujo who talks about nothing but how a business should be run on postmortems after things happen, making sure you learn the lessons of everything you do. With delegation, you can't, with every delegation, you're not going to do a big formal debrief. And I want you to do this, routinely, but I want you to do it very short and quick. And the questions are, if we were going to do this over again, what would you make sure you do? These are the things we learned that were positive. And if we were to do it over again, what would you absolutely do differently because it didn't go well? And, if it's appropriate, you can build that into future processes and procedures. But if it's not, this is just learning for the two of you to make sure that you get the learning of what went right and what didn't go right. We're just about done. Remember, 7 steps. This is the 7th step, and then we're going to have time for questions and discussion and all that kind of good stuff. Because step 7 is praise. So say thank you and praise them, praise them, praise them, praise them, praise them, praise them. Very specifically, I put it 6 times because of the learning from a U of M professor named Marcel Losada, who embedded herself and her research assistants in groups that all did the exact same thing so they could see who was successful and who wasn't. And all she did was put a tick mark down every time there was a positive interaction between management and the employees, and every time there was a negative in a different column. So positive would be praise, thanks, setting vision, cheerleading, that type of thing. And negative would be, we screwed up, things are bad, you got to do it better this time, not good enough, all those kind of things. And what she found was that below 3-to-1, positive to negative, teams were always underperforming. Above 3-to-1, at 6-to-1 was where world-class companies were. And usually there's a skeptic in the room that says, can't you overdo these things? And the answer she found was absolutely. At 14-to-1, you start to underperform again because you are not paying attention to the actual problems, right? And we can't ignore the problems. That's not the point here. The point is to point out the good stuff so you get more of it. As Tal Ben-Shahar said, when you appreciate the good appreciates. You get more of it. So you're trying to get more of the good stuff they did. So you don't have to say, great job on this delegation. You could say, I love that you did this. Make sure that you're going to get more of the things that you like that they did. So there they are. Prepare ahead of time. Clearly define the task. Ask them to delegate it, to paraphrase it back. Check in with them on what else they would need in order to get it done. Make sure you identify checkpoints and check in with them so you can keep them in the lane, on their way to wild success. Hold a debriefing session so that your organization is chronically learning and creating that upward spiral. And then praise, 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 praise. All right, let's see what questions we have, observations, thoughts. God.
So I've approached, I'd like your feedback on this. I've approached much larger projects that I've identified that I needed to get off my plate. And to delegate it, the first, on a very simple level, people will say, okay, just delegate the task and go. But it's, and I found approach I've tried recently is, so for example, I do all the invoicing for our construction team. And it's a very, I've created this very complicated way of doing it. And I would never think it would be successful to delegate something so complicated. So what I did is once I found someone that I thought, oh, that's someone I can delegate to, I put a program in place where she helped me design the system, but it's really under my vision because I understand it better than she does. She's pretty green. In order to create a system that I then can delegate and train that hopefully someday she will own and want to improve on. Does that make sense?
Absolutely.
But it wasn't a, you design a system, here you go. I hope it works out. It's, I have to design this system, hopefully with her involved, so I can then delegate it and get away from it. So it's like I got a multi-stage process.
Yeah, look, when you know, if I was a quality manager, Todd, the way I would say this is, you know, I'm going to write down a process because a process exists. So you have a process. You had something that you were trying to duplicate, and you know it'd be a shame to let somebody reinvent that from scratch when you're getting the results you want. So I don't see any issue with that.
Well, just a little bit different. The process I have is not good. I'm just able to manage it because I know all the parts, right? But it takes me a lot of time, and it's a burden for a lot of things I need to be doing. The idea is I have to, the task has to be redesign the process, then be able to delegate it. So the idea I had was I brought her into the designing the process part, but it was really me driving the very specifically the train. I just wasn't sure step 3 I was violating.
No, I don't think so. I think you're delegating a portion of what you're looking for, not the whole thing. That's okay. That's still delegation. Does that mean in the future, if you had somebody who was crackerjack and you thought, I'm just going to delegate this to them, that would be a bad instinct? No. But
Well, my
in this
hope is
instance,
that,
I don't see that as a mistake.
my hope is if she's participating in a big delegation kind of as a sidekick, let's say, that she's also learning how the big process was developed. And then next time I might say, hey, you've seen us do this once. Let's have you start it because you've now got experience. So I'm trying to, I believe it develops two things at once.
Yep, I agree. Other questions, comments,
No,
concerns?
just Brian, you got to hold me accountable. So I got a green one for positive and an orange one for negative. So our next check-in, make sure I'm getting my at least 6-to-1 quota in here. So I will continue to drive this and do better. So thank you. Appreciate the time.
You got it.
You know, Brian, one comment that's always, you know, this is my opinion, but I've always tried to live by it. Not always the best, but any leader is limited in their ability to not delegate. So I've seen very strong individuals run organizations that get stuck, can't grow, can't evolve. And often it's a function of the leaders at capacity. They can't, there's no more bandwidth, but yet so many functions have to go through that one single person. And hey, for some, that's great. If that's their mode of operation, go for it. But for someone like myself, who wants to continue to climb, continue to grow, wants my organization to continue to grow and expand, if I continue to hold on to things and don't find a way to push them down, sideways, and find where they actually belong, and that's going to be an evolution as time moves on, right? Something that belongs with me today may not belong with me 6 months or a year from now. But if that is not an intentional, continued process in my head, and I try to get my team members to do this, people will get stuck and they'll plateau, they'll burn out. People under them.
And John, I will say that's not true just of the leader, particularly when it's the CEO that we're talking about. That will be a governor on the ability of the organization to scale, not just the CEO themselves. It would be staggeringly difficult for the management team to wrestle that kind of behavior away from the CEO. CEOs have to always be making their job smaller so that they can take on the next challenge that's going to be the thing that's going to hold their organization back.
Yeah. And that should proliferate down through their teams.
That's right.
Team leader, regardless of where they are in the org chart, should be thinking the same way. How do I make my job redundant? How do I work myself out of a job? Which means then I can tackle tasks bigger than what I'm currently doing. And some people, and you hit it early in the presentation, some people get stuck in this concept of, if I delegate my way out of a job, or if I build my team underneath me to the point where they don't need me, well, where does that leave me? Well, that leaves you an opportunity. That's what I look at it.
Absolutely.
And
we've had members, and obviously won't say who. We've had members recently process issues along those lines. I feel like I've delegated so much away that I feel like I've got an identity crisis. But here's the thing, guys, there will always be great things. See you, Stan. There will always be great things that require you.
Exactly.
Strategy is never done.
No, it's never done. Anyway, that's my editorial. I think what you put together was great.
Hey, Brian, I just have one comment that made me think a little bit about in a rapidly expanding organization like mine, where I've stressed everyone in it, and I'm moving a number of them to other roles and responsibility within the organization. Not only is delegation important, but continued evolution of job descriptions are like the foundation of that, especially when new tasks come up and things happen. So good stuff. It makes me think inwardly here a little bit about making sure we're defining the roles as we expand.
But it's a great point, Jerry, that I don't know that I had necessarily put that 1-2 punch together, but you're absolutely right. As you're delegating more away, and as I've often said, the way that I grew in my early career was I would work to make my job really small, and then I'd say to the CEO, "Hey, I see that's not working very well. Give me that." And I just kept doing that. So to your point, every time I would do that, every time I would make my job small and then grab the next thing, my job description should have changed to fit it.
Yeah.
Great point. Great point.
Can I ask that? Are you literally saying that you go in and recreate a job description for a person as that develops? Is that what you're saying, or?
Absolutely.
Yeah, and I think we started to do that in different, roles and functions, but I think it has to be kind of continually updated. I think I need to, kind of put that on every leader's, task list to continually update those things.
Are you connecting that with a compensation review, or is that two separate items in your world?
We're a sales organization, so if you want to make more money, you sell more. It's kind of how it goes. But some of the operational things and other functions could use some of that.
But in theory, Todd, the answer is yes, but offset. They're not one for ones. They are, though. Employee growth is the foundation for being able to, keep compensation changes happening. So if you want to have a good, robust compensation package from your organization, my suggestion to you is that you would take it very seriously to grow before they have to pay you for that growth. Be way more valuable than you have to be so that they want to pay you more is the best way to get more money. Other thoughts, questions, concerns? This is all malarkey. Why are you sharing this with us? Anything like that?
Hey, Brian, this is Jameis. Sorry for joining a little late, but it's funny, Bob and I have been going through our individual job descriptions recently, and kind of just going through the different things we're involved in within our organization. And it's very similar. Gerald, you said, you're growing at a rapid rate and growing in these different directions. It's like you have to keep track of the things that you're doing, because if they become a core component of your business, you don't want to miss on an opportunity to expand on that. I know mine was just shocking. I kind of just looked at my original job that I applied for, and then I'm like, wow, it's not anywhere near that. But all these things that I've added have added value to the organization. So it is that, I think that can't be emphasized enough, just tracking it and making sure you're expanding on that value.
Yeah, absolutely. Good. All right. Well, I'm always available for questions. So what I'm going to do is thank everybody. Boy, I love to teach. I hope that came across today. So thank you for the opportunity to be able to do that. And, I'll be available for questions or comments or how-tos anytime. And thank you, everybody, for coming. I hope you got great value. I'll send out the recording probably later today once Google has a chance to get it all worked out and processed. Thanks, everybody.
Cool.
Thanks, Brian.
See you guys.